Go so?
Well, good morning, everybody. It is just after 4 o'clock, about 25 minutes after 4 here in Guyana. Coming to you live from the Cheddi Jagan International Airport at Tamiri, where we're tracking some breaking news this morning. Fly Jamaica Airways Boeing 757 aircraft was forced to make an emergency landing at the Cheddi Jagan International Airport moments after it departed Guyana. We are being told the pilot was forced to turn back after some emergency lights went off. On landing, he was able to stop the aircraft. So as you can see, the aircraft came shooting through the fence of the Cheddi Jagan Airport, the perimeter fence of the airport, and only came to a halt after it encountered sand in that new area that is being extended at the airport. So far, we were told this morning. Again, if you're now joining us, Fly Jamaica Airways crashes after making an emergency landing here at the Cheddi Jagan International Airport at Tamiri. The aircraft looks badly damaged. The back of the aircraft, the rear of the aircraft, you can see the wing damage. Emergency crews rushed out and they were able to get the passengers safely out. Again, if you're now joining us again, this is Gordon Mosley coming to you live from the Cheddi Jagan International Airport, where, as you can see, a Fly Jamaica airplane, the 757 plane, has crashed at the airport. It reportedly departed Guyana just after 1 o'clock this morning on its way to Jamaica, was forced to turn back and make an emergency landing. We see some members of the fire service still out here. We're not receiving any reports of anyone being hurt, or seriously hurt, that is, but we understand that there are some injuries. That is the airport all the way behind there. The aircraft, after touching down, apparently the pilot could not bring it to a stop, so it came straight through the fence here at the airport. You can see the right side wing of the aircraft crashing into the ground. You can see the engine also being stuck in the sand. And so half of the aircraft is through that perimeter fence of the airport. The other half is within the airport's compound. And this is the area where they were now doing some expansion works on the runway for the airport. We're seeing some members of the flight crew and some members of the the fire service and airport emergency out here. They were able to get everyone away from the scene. They were able to get the passengers out. The passengers would be on the other side of the airport. We saw emergency vehicles rushing up and heading down when we were heading up to the airport this morning. Again, we are told this occurred just after the aircraft takeoff. It usually takes off just after 1 on Friday mornings for Jamaica with an onward connection to New York. And so we're being told that just after it took off from Guyana, the pilot would have encountered some problems, and so he was forced to turn the plane back and head back to Guyana. Once coming back here, he was not able to bring the aircraft to a stop or slow down upon landing. So the aircraft shot straight off the runway, and as you can see, came to a halt after running over into the sand. And just on the edge of a ditch, just on the edge of where this part of the airport, the outer part of the airport runs off. So beyond there, it's a steep ditch. And so he was able to bring the plane to a halt just before that, reminiscent of what occurred with Caribbean Airlines at the same airport a few years ago. But again, we're being told that the pilot encountered some troubles after departing Guyana, was forced to return to the Cheddi Jagan airport, and upon arrival, he encountered some difficulties in getting the aircraft to come to a complete stop. So we're up here at the Cheddi Jagan International Airport at Tamiri tracking this late-breaking story. You would know that Fly Jamaica, although it carries the Fly Jamaica name, it is a Guyanese-owned airline owned by Captain Ronald Rees, who's been working in the aviation sector for many years. The airline currently operates 2 aircraft. They fly to Toronto, Jamaica, and New York City from Guyana. And of course, they fly between Jamaica and those destinations too. So they operate 2 aircraft, a 757 and a 767. The 757 is the one that would usually make the Guyana run, the one that would usually be coming to Guyana. It's the smaller of the 2. And this is the one that we're seeing here that would have encountered some troubles upon arrival here at the Cheddi Jagan Airport and shooting straight through the fence. As you can see, the aircraft badly damaged, especially the rear of the aircraft. The back of the aircraft is sitting on the tarmac, on part of the tarmac. The right side wing, as you can see there, badly damaged. I'm going to try to get closer. And you can see the part of the engine there, completely damaged, also stuck in the sand here at the Cheddi Jagan Airport. The emergency crews were quick in response. As you know, there's a fire service based here at the airport. And so they were able to rush out here, get the passengers off. Some of the passengers have contacted their families to let them know they're safe. I was contacted by the wife of a passenger who was on the plane, who sort of documented what took place, saying that just after takeoff, as it was leveling up, as they would say, the pilot encountered some troubles, and they said they're going to return to Guyana. But on landing back here in Guyana at the Cheddi Jagan Airport, for whatever purpose, we're not getting the details right now, so we don't want to speculate too much. But based on what we've been told so far, upon landing, the pilot was unable to bring the aircraft to a complete stop or slow it down on landing, and so it just overshot the entire runway once landing here at the Cheddi Jagan Airport and coming through the perimeter fence, stopping in the sand here at the airport. You can see where that front wheel is stuck, and that is what would have stopped the plane as it burst through the perimeter fence here at the Cheddi Jagan Airport. So far, we're being told that all the passengers are able to get off. We're being told that some of them have been rushed to the hospital. We've not been told of the injuries so far. We see members of the fire service still out here. We see members of the police force. They're still out here. And so they're still trying to gather as much information as we could here. But we're going to continue tracking this story. We're going to continue remaining a bit live with you as we follow this developing story here at the Cheddi Jagan International Airport. Good morning once again if you're now joining us. A Fly Jamaica aircraft, a 527 aircraft, has crashed at the Cheddi Jagan Airport Upon landing, an emergency landing, it had just taken off from Guyana when it was forced to make a U-turn and head back to the Cheddi Jagan airport. And as it landed, we were being told the pilot was unable to bring the aircraft to a complete stop, or was unable to slow it down after touching down at the airport, and so it went completely through. We're seeing some members of the flight crew now getting off the plane. We're seeing one of the flight attendants there now getting off. And I think I saw pilot on board still, and so they're the ones who would be the last to leave the airplane. And so we're seeing one of the flight crew members, a young lady picking back into the plane. She just came out of it. And a few moments ago, we saw the pilot still going through the airplane, as they would usually do to ensure everyone is off. But based on what we've been told, the plane, after landing, the emergency crews rushed out, and so they were able to quickly activate their emergency plan and get all the passengers off and to a safe and secured area. But this is the situation right now at the Cheddi Jagan airport. As I was telling you earlier, Fly Jamaica, they operate two aircraft, the 757 and the 767. From Georgetown, Guyana, they operate flights to New York City, to Toronto, Canada, and to Kingston, Jamaica. This flight is one of their scheduled services, was heading to Kingston, Jamaica for an onward connection to New York City, when the pilot was forced to turn back and make an emergency landing at the airport after encountering some problems. So we're seeing the situation here. And if you can see there, you're seeing a little light in there. That is some members of the flight crew still in the aircraft, ensuring everything is safe, ensuring they get out safely. And as I was explaining to you earlier, that is a police vehicle down there in the ditch. The aircraft was able to come to a complete stop just feet away from that ditch here at the airport. So you're seeing where it would have gone down. And as I was saying to you earlier, it's a bit reminiscent of what took place with Caribbean Airlines, when in that case, the pilot overshot the runway on landing. But this plane, after making an emergency landing, the pilot was unable to bring it to a halt or to slow it down. And so the aircraft burst through the perimeter fence way to the back of the airport. Okay, we're seeing them. They're dousing some stuff, so we're going to just pull back. They're dousing the plane once again. Dousing one of the engines on the other side. So we see the emergency service moving back. They're dousing it with foam and water. So we're just going to pull back a bit as they do their job. We're on the outside of the airport, but this is where we're able to get a good shot of what's taking place. Okay, we see some members of the flight crew still coming down there. I'm going to hold with this shot for a while. But again, we are told that everyone was able to get off the aircraft safely. We're seeing some members of the flight crew still getting their bags off, and are getting ready to come off of the airplane. We're seeing the emergency services. They're still out here at the airport. We're seeing the operations manager at the Cheddi Jagan airport. We're seeing him there. We see one of the flight attendants just making her way down. As I was explaining to you earlier, Fly Jamaica, though it carries the Fly Jamaican name, it is a Guyanese-owned airline owned by Captain Ronald Reese, who would have worked in the aviation sector for many years. And we're seeing the captain now trying to make his way out of the aircraft. And this is on the outside of the aircraft. So we see some police officers that's going to try to come and assist them. They came on the other side of the aircraft. They exited the front right-hand side of the aircraft. And we see some police officers trying to assist them to get on the other side. And as you can see, some members of the flight crew are still making their way off the aircraft. The captain is still in the plane there, trying to do some additional checks. And we're trying to see what exactly is going on. We're seeing the operations manager of the airport, Mr. Kendall, making his way across to this side. The airport, of course, was forced to activate its emergency plan once they encountered this problem. I think we might be asked to step back. So we're going to try to see how much we can get right here. And we're seeing the police coming out to assist those crew members who were the last set to be departing the aircraft. And we see members of the flight crew doing some checks as they prepare to depart the aircraft. We wouldn't want to bother them, of course. They must be traumatized by the ordeal. And so they're doing their checks, and so we can allow them to do their work. But again, in case you're now joining us, this is the Fly Jamaica 757 aircraft, one of the two airplanes operated by that service. We're being told that the aircraft, after departing Guyana on its way to Jamaica for an onward connection to New York City, was forced to make an emergency U-turn, to make an emergency landing here in Guyana, after the pilot would have encountered some difficulties. We're being told that once the pilot would have encountered those difficulties, he decided to turn back to Guyana. Upon arrival here in Guyana, he could not bring the aircraft to a halt. And so he was forced to come through the fence, or he couldn't stop the airplane, so the plane came through the fence of the aircraft, the back of the airplane, came through the fence of the airport to the back of the airport, and coming to a halt just in front of a ditch that goes way down. And so you're seeing the captain now emerging, being the last person to come out of the airplane. He's been checking this. He's been checking the aircraft since it made a crash landing, and as you can see, you're seeing about 3 other members of the flight crew still here. So we're trying to get information on this.
how they get here, it's supposed to be a secure site in the first place.
Excuse me, you haven't moved from here until they finish moving.
Are you seeing the
Huh? What do you mean they move it?
Good morning, Mr. Patterson. How are you doing?
Good morning. Can you move them from here?
Could you give us an update on what may have happened here?
We'll give a press release. Can you, there's a secure site guarding coming.
Yeah, well, we're out here.
Can you escort them into further places?
Do you have any update, any details?
No, we have no updates.
Okay, that is the Minister of Public Infrastructure, David Patterson. He's up here. We're seeing the head of the airport. They're asking us to move back, so we're gonna step away a bit.
Thank you.
Let's escort them off now.
Yes, please. Yes.
Please put the man down there.
Yes, I already did that.
But we're trying to see how much we can get with the plane. When we arrived, this area was unsecured, so we were able to make some entry into this airport. This is the outer part of the airport.
Yes,
but now they're asking us to step back a bit as they begin their investigations. You see the ministers up here. We're seeing the operations manager up here, and they're now trying to activate a cordoning off of a section of the airport. The Minister of Public Infrastructure just arriving, and he is now observing what's happening out here. But again, if you're now joining us, we're coming to you live from the Cheddi Jagan International Airport at Tamiri, where a Fly Jamaica flight has crashed after making an emergency landing here at the airport. The airplane would have taken off from the airport just after 1 o'clock, we were told, on its way to Kingston, Jamaica, when the pilot encountered some difficulties and made a decision to turn back and head back to Guyana. Once here in Guyana, once on touchdown in Guyana, he was unable to bring the plane to a stop, unable to slow it down, and so the plane came bursting through the back perimeter fence of the airport, bursting through that fence in an area that they're now doing some expansion work. And so as you can see here now, the airplane coming to a stop in the sand, half of the airplane still on the inside of the airport compound area, and the other half on the outside just in front of a ditch. As the sun rises in a few minutes or so, we'll get a better picture of what's happening. So we're going to move back to allow the investigators to do their work. We're now seeing police officers moving in the area, and so we're going to step back to allow them to do their work. But as we were telling you, we've been coming to you live for a little bit, tracking this story, getting the details. We're not getting much details because from this side of the airport, we're not able to see the passengers. We just saw a few members of the flight crew who were still on the plane doing their final checks.
I see. Maybe outside, right?
Oh, I just start to move.
Well, them man, they say the outside, sorry, no one ever said no.
But we're hearing the airplane might have had over 100 passengers. They were on their way to New York City via Kingston, Jamaica, when the pilot was forced to turn back to Guyana, and upon landing, making that emergency landing, he was unable to bring the aircraft to a halt. And so as you can see, the airplane bursting through the perimeter fence, the back perimeter fence at the airport. And half of the plane is out that area. The other half is in that area still. The back half of the plane, as you can see, has a lot of damages sitting on the tarmac. The plane on the wing on the other side, as we showed you, completely crashed into the part of the tarmac there, and part of the engine on the other side also crashing into the tarmac here. This is a Fly Jamaica 757 aircrafts. Fly Jamaica, they operate two planes, a 757 and a 767. The 767, of course, being the larger one. The 757 is the one they usually operate between Guyana and Jamaica and New York City. We're being told over 100 passengers were on board. Everyone got off. There were some injuries. And so the people who are here, the security services now out here just monitoring the situation. The fire service, they've been out here. So they've been able to get all the passengers off and move them back into the arrivals area here at the Cheddi Jagan Airport. It's now just about 10 minutes before the 5 o'clock hour here in Georgetown, Guyana. And we've been out here for close to 45 minutes or more tracking this story for you. Before we moved back to allow them to do their probe, we saw members of the flight crew, the captain being the last to depart the aircraft. From the time we got up here, we saw him taking his time going through the airplane. You saw him with his light going through the airplane, ensuring everything was okay. Then the other flight crew left the plane. We saw the emergency chutes. All of the emergency chutes were activated. And so they were able to let down those emergency chutes and have the passengers depart, those emergency slides, as we would call them, have the passengers depart on that. Once they were off, they were able to get them back into the lounge of the airport. They had to get vehicles to take them back into that area. And once in that area, the pilot would have done the pilot and the airline would have been doing their count. Then the pilot went through the aircraft, monitoring everything before he just, I think he just came off of the plane. As we're telling you, the pilot, they departed Guyana just after 1 o'clock for Kingston, Jamaica. Into the flight, the pilot encountered some difficulties, some emergency signs went off, we were told, and he made a decision to turn back to Guyana. He was able to turn back to Guyana. On landing, he was unable to bring the aircraft to a stop, he was unable to slow it down. And so on landing, the aircraft burst through the perimeter fence here at the Cheddi Jagan Airport, where they're doing some reconstruction works, where they're doing some expansion works, as you can see here. They've been extending the runway, and so this is the last phase of part of that project, the extension of the runway. But the pilot was unable, within the confines of the airport, to bring the airplane to a stop on that tarmac, and so burst through the fence here, coming to a stop after encountering the sand that is building up this area. Of course, a number of Guyanese flight attendants were on this aircraft who work with Fly Jamaica Airways. And you're seeing some emergency crews still up here. We just saw the Minister of Public Infrastructure up here. He's saying he can't provide much details now, but he's up here, and so they're trying to gather as much information as they could. Once there's an airplane accident like this, the Guyana Civil Aviation Authority will have to activate the lead investigation, being assisted by the international aviation authorities and the U.S. authorities also. It's a Boeing aircraft, and so the Boeing company will more than likely be a part of that investigation also. So you're going to have a number of agencies, not just from Guyana, a number of local and international agencies leading this probe into what they will now consider crash site, trying to understand what took place. And so that those agencies will include the manufacturer of the plane. Those agencies will include the aviation authorities here in Guyana, the aviation authorities over in the United States, international aviation folks, as well as the aviation authorities from across in Jamaica. And of course, the government of Guyana is going to play a part in those investigations also. We're going to break our broadcast for a bit because we're going to try to go around to the other side of the airport, the arrival lounge, where many of those passengers might be, to get some interviews and some better understanding of what took place. So we're going to break our live broadcast for a bit as we try to make our way to the other side of the airport. And it's a good walk and drive. We had to drive, park, and take about a 10-minute walk to this side of the airport, climbing a few sand hills to get to the area where we are right now tracking this story. Once again, if you're now joining us, this is a Fly Jamaica 757 aircraft. The pilots had encountered some problems, we're being told, just after takeoff from Guyana, made a decision to turn back and make an emergency landing here in Guyana. And so on landing, based on what we were told by some relatives of the passengers who were on board, on landing, the pilot was unable to bring the aircraft to a stop or to slow it down on landing. And so completely burst through the perimeter fence in the back of the airport. And as you can see, coming through that fence, bursting through that fence, and coming to a stop in the sand buildup here outside of the perimeter fence, just feet away from a ditch, because if it had continued going forward, there's a big ditch there, and it could have been a bigger problem. But from what we're being told, the passengers the passengers were taken off the airplane. We were also being told that there might have been some injuries. We're not sure of the seriousness of those injuries, but we were told that there might be some injuries. As we were making our way up from Georgetown to the airport, we saw at least 1 or 2 ambulances rushing to Georgetown. So there might have been some injuries, and this took place, the incident may have taken place just around 2-3 o'clock. The aircraft, of course, departed Guyana just around 1 or just after 1 o'clock, heading to Kingston, Jamaica, when the pilot was forced to make a U-turn and head back to Georgetown and making this emergency landing. So we're going to try and keep tracking this for a minute for you. As I was indicating to you, we're going to try to step back a bit from this area where we've been covering. There's this breaking news story here because we want to see if we can get some of the passengers to speak with us. They've been the other side of the airport. So we're trying to get as much information as we could here from the Cheddi Jagan airport to relay it to you. But all the passengers were able to make it off the plane. And as you can see, all the emergency systems are activated. The passengers were able to make it off. They're now in the airport. So some family members have been coming back up. But this is the situation as it is right now here at the Cheddi Jagan airport, where earlier this morning a Fly Jamaica 757 aircraft was forced to make an emergency landing here at the airport moments after taking off for Kingston, Jamaica. They had to turn back about 45 minutes to an hour in the flight and make this emergency landing. On the emergency landing, we were told the pilot was unable to bring the aircraft to a halt or to slow it down. And so it burst through the back perimeter fence of the airport, coming to a halt after encountering the huge buildup of sand in this area. And so we're going to try to continue to track this. I'm going to try to get on the other side of the airport as day breaks. It's now just after 5 o'clock, moments after 5 o'clock. So we're going to try to see how much information we can gather from some of the passengers as they make their way out. I see someone asking, how will this affect flights coming in for the day? We're not sure of that. We've been trying to get some information from the minister, but he just arrived, and so he's not saying anything as yet. The airport officials are not saying anything, but usually in these circumstances, they would shut the airport down for a bit. So I'm not sure if they have done that as yet. I'm not sure how they're going to address the airport for the rest of the day, whether those other flights would be able to depart. We see a Caribbean Airlines plane on the tarmac. That would usually leave around 5:30. I don't think it's going to be leaving at 5:30 this morning because you have fire engines on the tarmac, and of course the area is an emergency zone now. And so they would have to do several checks and clearances before they're allowed to put everything back into operation here at the airport. As I was explaining to you earlier, in these circumstances, the investigation, this is now going to be known as a crash site. The investigation will involve authorities from Guyana, from the United States, from Jamaica, from the International Civil Aviation Authority, and it will also involve the Boeing company because this is a Boeing 757 aircraft. Ironically, Guyana is getting ready to host a major international conference on aviation security and aviation safety. That conference is coming up in Guyana later on this month. In 2 weeks' time, that conference is going to be hosted here in Guyana. And so we have this incident taking place just before that. Very, very reminiscent of what took place with the Caribbean Airlines airplane a few years ago at the Cheddi Jagan airport when that airplane landed and the pilot overshot the runway. That plane similarly coming to a halt just before a ditch area at the airport. That Caribbean Airlines plane had broken in two. This aircraft, the body of the aircraft appears to be still in good order, but as you can see, the landing gear to the back of the aircraft, the plane is completely sitting on the tarmac. So you're seeing the wing on the other side where we were earlier. The wing completely on the tarmac. It appears damaged, and that engine on that side also appears badly damaged. But again, in case you're now waking up, the passengers were all able to be exited from the aircraft. We got all the passengers off. They're in a safe zone at the airport now. The flight crew, they were the last to leave the airplane. We saw the pilot, the captain of the flight. He was the last to leave after doing his checks throughout the plane. And so that is the situation here. Everyone is safe. We're hearing some reports of some injuries. We're not sure how many injuries. We're not sure how many persons injured. We are not sure of the state of those injuries, the seriousness of those injuries. But as I explained to you earlier, as I was making my way up here, I saw at least 2 ambulances making their way to Georgetown. There might have been more that might have left earlier. We're not sure. But that is the situation up here at the Cheddi Jagan Airport, Tamiri, where we've been tracking this story for over 45 minutes, going on to an hour now. And again, good morning, everyone. It is just after 5 here in Georgetown, Guyana. We're at the Cheddi Jagan International Airport at Tamiri, where a Fly Jamaica 757 aircraft crashed through the fence upon landing here at the airport, making an emergency landing at the airport. We were told that the pilot was forced to make an emergency turnaround after taking off from Guyana. The flight may have been 45 minutes in the air when the pilot was forced to make that emergency turnaround and an emergency landing at the airport. Once landing at the airport, he was unable to bring the plane to a complete stop. So the plane burst through the perimeter fence of the airport, only coming to a complete stop when it encountered the huge sand buildup. There's a big sand buildup here to the back of the airport where they're doing some expansion work on the tarmac and the runway. They've been doing some expansion work here for a while. And so as you can see, the airplane only coming to a stop there. Earlier, we were on the other side of the aircraft. Of course, as the police and investigators moved in, we had to move back to allow them to do their work. But from the other side of the aircraft, we saw some of the damages, that right side of the plane, a lot of damages to that side of the aircraft. The engine appears completely damaged. The wing on that side appears completely damaged. But again, all of the passengers, over 100 passengers, were completely evacuated. We've been told of some injuries. We're not sure on the level of those injuries. This aircraft, the 757, was heading to Kingston, Jamaica, when some emergency systems went off, and so the pilot decided to turn around the airplane because that flight to Jamaica is just about 3 hours to about 3.5 hours. But the pilot decided he's going to turn back to Georgetown, Guyana 45 minutes into the flight. Upon landing, making that emergency landing, he encountered some difficulties, unable to bring the plane to a stop. The emergency crews at the airport, the fire service, is a fire station based at the airport immediately activated its emergency plan. And so they were able to assist all of the passengers in getting off. The flight crew remained on board, ensuring that all of the passengers were off. And as you would have seen if you were with us earlier, you would have seen those the flight crew, members of the flight crew, the last set to leave the airplane. We saw the captain going through the entire airplane. We saw him with his little torchlight going through the airplane, doing his checks. Once he would have confirmed that everyone is off and they got some of their bags off, the bags of the flight crew with their documents, then we saw the captain eventually leaving the aircraft. But we've been up here for close to an hour now, tracking this story for you, getting the details. The sun is going to be rising in a bit here at the Cheddi Jagan airport. As it is now, we do not think the airport is open, so there might be some delays in flights for the day. Usually when there are situations like this, they would shut down the airport until they get the all clear from the emergency services. So we saw a Fly Jamaica plane is on the tarmac. I'm not sure they'll be able to depart on schedule this morning, and there was at least 2 other Fly Jamaica flights that were expected this morning. One is coming in from New York City that might have to divert to, that's Caribbean Airlines, sorry. A Caribbean Airlines flight is expected later this morning. One from New York, one from Trinidad and Tobago. We do not think they'll be coming in on time, but you might want to check with the airlines. I figure they'll be putting out some alerts as this story develops, because when situations like this occur, they would activate their full emergency plan, which would see a shutting down of the airport. But again, all of the passengers have been safely evacuated. We are told that there were some injuries. We're not sure of the severity of those injuries or the type of injuries, but we're told that there were some injuries, and those persons are being given some medical attention. This is a Fly Jamaica 757 aircraft. It's one of 2 airplanes operated by that airline. They operate the 757 and the 767 plane, both manufactured by the Boeing company. Of course, you would know that Fly Jamaica, although it carries that Fly Jamaica name, it is a Guyanese-owned airline, owned by Guyanese Captain Ronald Rees. They've been in operation for a number of years. They fly between Georgetown, Guyana, Kingston, Jamaica, and New York City and Toronto, Canada. They also operate services from Jamaica to New York City to Canada, and of course to Guyana. This flight was on its way to Kingston, Jamaica, with an onward connection to New York City. When about 45 minutes to an hour after takeoff, during the flight, we were told the pilot saw some emergency systems go off, and so he decided to make a U-turn, head back to the Cheddi Jagan airport. The flight to Jamaica is about 3.5 hours, so he made this decision 45 minutes to an hour into the flight, decided to turn around, come back to the Cheddi Jagan airport. On touchdown here at the Cheddi Jagan International Airport, as you can see, he was unable to bring the airplane to a complete stop, was unable to bring the airplane to a halt. And so this is the situation that you're seeing now. The place is now getting a bit brighter as the sun rises over the Cheddi Jagan airport. So we'll be able to get some better pictures for you. We're being told someone is now telling us that the plane might have been heading to Toronto. That's what we're now being told. We have one of the relatives of a passenger telling us that she has some relatives on the flight and that it was heading to Toronto. So we're going to check on that when it was forced to make a turn around and head back to the Cheddi Jagan airport. We're told that there were over 100 passengers on board when the airplane was forced to make that turn around to Guyana and make an emergency landing here at the Cheddi Jagan International Airport. Okay, so we're now getting more details coming in. The flight was in fact going to Toronto, Canada. We're getting some confirmations coming in with that. Yeah, we're getting some confirmations with that it was indeed going to Toronto, Canada. It was a non-stop service to Toronto when the pilot made that turn around and headed back to the Cheddi Jagan airport. Upon touchdown, he was unable to bring that plane to a stop. And so as you can see, it burst through the perimeter fence, the back perimeter fence of the airport. Half of the plane is beyond that perimeter fence. The other half, the back half, is within that perimeter fence. And this is the situation. No lives lost. We understand there were some injuries. The emergency services were activated. The passengers were ushered back from this area because this is a good way from where the passengers would usually be, from the airport terminal building. And so they were ushered back to the airport in vehicles and stuff like that. But this is the situation right now. We're getting some more confirmations coming in that the plane was in fact heading out to Toronto, Canada. We have not spoken with any of the passengers as yet. We're going to try to make our way to that side of the airport in a bit. But we're here to the back of the airport trying to gather as much information and bring this live broadcast to you. Again, we're trying to get some information about the airport and the situation here. Usually when these incidents occur, they would shut down the airport. They would shut down the airport for a while until given all clear from the authorities. So there are a few flights that are currently on their way to Guyana. They might have to redirect those flights to Trinidad and Tobago. We know there's a Caribbean Airlines flight that should be coming in just after 7, another one after 8, I think. And so those flights might be redirected as the airport might be on a shutdown right now as they begin this big investigation into what occurred here. And so as the sun rises, you're getting a better picture of the situation here at the Cheddi Jagan International Airport at Tamiri. as we have been able to confirm now through a number of relatives and some officials, the plane was in fact making its way to Toronto, Canada. When 45 minutes into the flight, the pilot saw some emergency systems go off, and he made a decision to turn around and head back here to the Cheddi Jagan International Airport, making an emergency landing. On landing, he was unable to slow the plane down. He was unable to bring it to a complete stop. And so the aircraft burst through the back perimeter fence of the airport. And as you can see, this is an area where they're doing some construction work right now. And so once it came through that fence, it encountered this heavy buildup of sand that they've been doing as part of the reconstruction and expansion of the airport. And to put this in some context, I'm going to show you the situation here, because you'll probably see it better when the sun comes up more. But this is a ditch. So, and it is more steep at that end where the airplane came to that stop. It is much more steep there. So you see the airplane coming to a stop just almost at the tip of that ditch. So you're getting a better picture from this side and a better understanding. You see vehicles on the road. Beyond there, you're seeing a police vehicle way down there. And this is an area that they have been building up as part of major expansion works that have been ongoing for a number of years at the Cheddi Jagan Airport. This is a Fly Jamaica 757 aircraft. As I was telling you earlier, Fly Jamaica, the Guyanese-owned airline, they operate two planes, a 757 and a 767, of course, both belonging to the Boeing company, manufactured by the Boeing company. And so the investigation will bring together officials from that Boeing company. The investigation will bring together officials from the Guyana Civil Aviation Authority. It will bring together investigators from the International Civil Aviation Authority, as well as the U.S. authorities, and of course the Jamaican authorities, because the airline is of course registered in Jamaica. So they'll all be a part of this investigation here at the Cheddi Jagan Airport, as they try to get as much information as they could on this situation, on what took place, what exactly took place with the airplane. As it is now, we're trying to get some confirmations on the state of the airport. More than likely, they would have closed the airport down temporarily to allow this investigation to really get underway. When there are situations like this, they would close the airport down to allow the situation to be properly investigated, to allow the accident to be properly investigated. So those flights that may have been going out, those other flights that may have been going out and coming into Guyana, might face some delays this morning, as this entire area has been shut off, has been closed off as part of this probe. And I'm just going to give you an idea of the area here that we're coming to you from. It's way to the back of the airport. And the aircraft coming to a stop in the sand there at the airport, coming to a stop after encountering a heavy buildup of sand there. It's clearer now, so we can zoom in a bit to show you how the front wheel got stuck completely in the sand. And so the plane coming to a halt there. All of the emergency systems were activated. They were able to get the passengers off. We were told over 100 passengers were on board heading to Toronto, Canada, when the pilot was forced to return to Guyana 45 minutes into the flight, return to Guyana and make an emergency landing here at the Cheddi Jagan International Airport at Tamiri. As I was explaining to you earlier, when we came up here, it was still pretty dark. We were able to get very close to the airplane But eventually we had to move back to allow the investigators to do their job, and as the more police arrived to cordon off the area. So this is where we are right now as the sun rises in the Tamiri area. You're getting clearer pictures of this Firefly Jamaica 757 aircraft that was on its way to Kingston, to Toronto, Canada, when it encountered some difficulties and the pilot was forced to make an emergency landing here at the Cheddi Jagan airport in Guyana. We're told all 100 passengers were safely evacuated. You can see the slides the slides were deployed, and the flight crew assisted all of the passengers safely off of the airplane. We saw about 4 flight crew members, including the pilot, the captain of the flight. They were the last to leave the airplane. We're told that the passengers are still in one of the lounges at the airport. They have not been given the all clear to leave. Of course, when these incidents occur, they would have to go through several checks. They would have to do head counts, get names and stuff like that for everybody. They've not been able to take off the bags off the plane as yet, so they'll eventually do that once they continue here with the investigation. Of course, we're coming to you once again from the Cheddi Jagan International Airport here at Tamiri, where this Fly Jamaica 757 aircraft was forced to make an emergency landing moments after takeoff. The flight was heading to Toronto, Canada, when we were told that the pilot would have encountered some difficulties after takeoff as they were leveling up that aircraft. And so once he would have encountered those difficulties, he decided to turn around the plane and head back to Georgetown, Guyana. That flight to Toronto would have been about 6 hours. So 45 minutes into the flight, as he encountered those difficulties, he decided to make this emergency landing here at the Cheddi Jagan International Airport. I see folks asking for the camera to turn towards the airport building. Folks, again, if you've been listening and paying attention, this is way to the back of the airport. This is nowhere close to the airport's building. So you cannot see any airport building from this area. This is way to the back of the airport, to the edge of the tarmac, the edge of that runway. This airplane, the Fly Jamaica flight, upon touchdown at the airport, making that emergency landing, the pilot was unable to bring the plane to a stop. And so, of course, as you can see, it burst through the perimeter fence of the airport, only coming to a stop when it encountered this heavy sand buildup, which is part of the works. All of the passengers, we're told over 100 passengers were on board. All of those passengers were safely evacuated from the aircraft. We're told there might have been some injuries. We're still checking on that. We're checking our various sources. Those passengers are still within the confines of the lounge at the airport. They've not been released as yet. They're doing checks with them. Of course, the airline and the airport officials and civil aviation officials are doing their checks. They're doing their interviews with them, trying to gather as much information as they could on this incident. The plane, as we were telling you earlier, was making its way to Toronto, Canada. We have the correct one earlier. We were told initially that it might have been heading to Kingston, Jamaica. But then we've been able to confirm, based on the reports from several family members of passengers on the flight, that this flight was indeed on its way to Toronto, Canada, when the pilot encountered some troubles, and they turned the plane back to make this landing here. And we're now getting some clearer pictures here as we get ready to wrap up this broadcast. But again, Fly Jamaica, 757 aircraft forced to make an emergency landing here at the Cheddi Jagan airport at Tamiri, moments after taking off from the airport. We were told the flight was heading to Toronto, Canada, when the pilot encountered some difficulties and decided to turn the plane back, bring it back to Georgetown, Guyana. On arrival here, making that emergency landing at the Cheddi Jagan airport, he was unable to bring the plane to a complete stop. He was unable to slow the plane down. That's what we're told based on passenger reports who would have spoken to their relatives. And so the plane burst through the perimeter fence at the airport, only coming to a complete stop after encountering this large sand buildup here at the airport. Of course, they're doing some major expansion works on the tarmac and the runway here at the airport. So this is all part of those expansion works. They've been building up this area. as part of the expansion works. And so the plane encountering that sand and coming to a complete stop. Over 100 passengers were on board. We were told that they were all safely evacuated from the plane. But they're still at the airport here as the investigation begins. We've not been told of any serious injuries, but we, as I was explaining to you earlier, as we were making our way up to the airport just around minutes to 4 o'clock time, as we were making our way up, we saw emergency vehicles heading towards Georgetown. Some ambulances, at least 2 we saw heading to Georgetown. We're not sure if others might have left earlier, but we saw those as we were making our way up here. This plane was making its way to Toronto, Canada, a 757 aircraft, when the pilot encountered some difficulties, made a U-turn, came back to Guyana and made this emergency landing. Again, we're told all passengers are safe. They were safely evacuated from the plane. When we got up here, we saw the flight crew up here. I'm now getting some more information. The head of the Civil Aviation Authority saying that 5 passengers were injured, and those passengers who would have been injured have been rushed to the hospital. So we're now getting some confirmation on that 5 passengers were injured, that coming from the head of the Guyana Civil Aviation Authority, Egbert Field. Investigations are on the way, as I was explaining to you earlier. Those investigations will involve the Guyana Civil Aviation Authority, the International Civil Aviation Authority, U.S. officials, as well as officials from the Jamaica Civil Aviation Authority and the Boeing Company. This accident comes just 2 weeks before Guyana is set to host a major international civil aviation conference right here in Guyana. And so just 2 days ago, we had officials talking about what they want to see at that conference. It will pay attention to airport security, to safety of the skies, safety of airplanes, safety of passengers. And of course, this will now become a hot button issue for that conference when it begins here in Guyana in a few weeks. But again, the passengers are safe. We're told that there were 5 injured passengers. They've been rushed to the emergency room. The other passengers are still here at the Cheddi Jagan International Airport at Tamiri. We don't have access to the passengers. They're within the confines of the airport, so we cannot go talk to the passengers at this stage. But we're trying to get as much information as we could. We're seeing some reports that the pilot was saying that they might have encountered some difficulties with the hydraulic system of the aircraft. We're getting bits and pieces of information coming to us. We're still trying to confirm much of it. We've been out here for over an hour now, bringing you this breaking news story, the situation here at the Cheddi Jagan International Airport. We're seeing members of the military. Of course, you would know that there's a Guyana Defense Force base close to this area. So we're seeing members of the military assisting the police with securing the crash site, securing the airplane, securing the area close to the airplane. You're seeing the members of the military out here, members of the police out here, and of course, officials of the Guyana Fire Service. They're out here also, as well as officials from the airport, all out here trying to get as much information as they could. But the security officials, of course, maintaining and securing this area. So that is the situation right now. I'm going to wrap up this broadcast. I'm going to come back with you once we would have gathered more information. But the plane, again, was heading to Toronto, Canada. When we were told after takeoff, about 45 minutes into the flight, the pilot reported some hydraulic issues and saw some emergency systems go off. And so he decided to make a U-turn and head back to Georgetown, Guyana. Once here, he was not able to bring the plane to a complete stop or to slow it down. So the aircraft bursting through the perimeter fence here at the airport and coming to a stop in the large buildup of sand here at the airport. Of course, we'll have more for you on newssourcegi.com and, of course, later tonight in our News Source Evening Bulletin. But as information comes, we're going to try to offer you as much information as we could on this breaking news story. But again, all of the passengers were safely evacuated. We are told that 5 passengers suffered injuries. Those passengers were taken to the hospital and are being attended to. But over 100 passengers were on board. And of course, there were crew members on board too. When we came up here, we saw the pilot was still going through the aircraft. The passengers would have already been evacuated, but the captain of the flight was still going through the aircraft, ensuring everyone was off, ensuring everything was okay before he himself, along with some other members of the flight crew, departed. He was the last person to leave the aircraft. Some of the crew members are Guyanese. I recognize at least 3 flight attendants, the ones we saw when we came up. I recognize them all to be Guyanese. So we know Fly Jamaica is a Guyanese-owned airline. They have a flight crew that's made up of Guyanese and Jamaican nationals. But we saw that I think the Guyanese crew might have been operating this flight, so we saw some flight attendants who were Guyanese. I'm not sure of the nationality of the captain and the co-pilot, but I saw at least 3 flight attendants who I know to be Guyanese. So in case you're now joining us, folks, pardon the tired face, coming to you from the Cheddi Jagan airport, where we're seeing the situation there where this Fly Jamaica airplane overshot the runway here at the airport. We were seeing the plane and the situation back there. We were up here pretty early before the sun came up, and so we were seeing the members of the Guyana Defense Force moving in to assist with securing the crash site. We were seeing members of the airport security team. We were also seeing members of the fire service and all up here. Over 100 passengers were on board this Fly Jamaica flight. It was heading to Toronto, Canada, when we were told the pilot encountered some difficulties with the hydraulic system. And so he decided to make a U-turn, head back to Georgetown, Guyana, made a crash landing here, an emergency landing here at the Cheddi Jagan airport. And so he was unable to bring the plane to a complete stop on that landing. And as you can see, it burst through the perimeter fence of the airport on the other side of the plane, where we were earlier. And you can probably go back on the live and see that. On the other side of the plane, there is major damage to the aircraft, the wing and part of the engine completely damaged. So we're seeing a lot of that happening there. So we're going to keep tracking this story for you, trying to get as much information as we could get. But this has been a breaking news story, and I'm Gordon Mosley, reporting from the Cheddi Jagan International Airport at Tamiri, and we're going to try bringing you updates on this story as it develops.